I'll call the order the August meeting of the Finance Committee. We have a very full agenda tonight, as demonstrated by the capacity crowd we have in here today. So we will get going right away. The first thing we will consider is the consent. Does anyone have any items they would want pulled? And I'll just start with you.
Yes. C2.
C2.
C3.
C3.
C8.
C8.
C9.
C9.
Particularly F.
C9F.
Oh, C10. I'm sorry.
C10.
C10 and C9. And C14 and C15. Whoa.
Mr. Chairman,
I move.
if it's no more, I'm going to move for the approval of the remainder.
Second.
Well, let me just check. Do you have any to add?
Oh, no, that's fine.
Oh, you have any to add? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the balance? I think
Move
I
for
did.
approval.
Third, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I do want to add C1 if that's okay, because we do have an adjustment. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. So those are approved, and we'll just go down and out in the numerical order. We'll start
This is quick.
with C1, please. And this was a revised item was placed at you. The only difference is the owner of the property has changed or was corrected. This is purchasing the land where we're right next to the fire station on Reynolda Road near the Wake Forest entrance, where we're going to be doing hopefully some work with the bond money on a new fire station. Kirk, did I get that correct?
You did.
I will entertain a motion to approve if there is.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. C1 is approved. We'll now go to C2, please.
Item C2, Report on Minority and Women Business Enterprise Disparity Study.
Ms. Adams, I think you had this.
Yes, Mr. Brooks. I know we've gotten a report, but is this just, I mean, I know it's for information, but I know we've been back and forth on this one for a while. I mean, so what are we expecting to glean from this? I mean, is there some points that staff wants to make, or we take it like homework and we go home and study it and then we come back again?
I think both. At the last meeting, it was discussed about looking at other cities and trying to make some comparisons with other cities that had had the disparity study made. So Walter Farabee, our MWBE coordinator, did just that, and that's what you've provided. And he's prepared today to give you a brief presentation on those findings.
Okay.
Accepted.
Come on up. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So what was provided to you was just another memo of information, because at the, I believe, June finance meeting, there was question as to how these disparity studies look in the results. So we looked at 4 different cities here in our region that have done disparity studies in recent years: Greensboro, Charlotte, Memphis, Tennessee, and Columbia, South Carolina. So some of the information you have is who provided the studies. The firm MGT of America does a number of studies and has done a lot here locally or in the region. And so some of the key findings we reported and pulled out, such as their subcontracting and professional services utilization of the MWBEs in these different cities. Significant findings from the reports and some of the key recommendations. In each report, diversity study, they tend to be 200 to 400 pages or more, so we provided the executive summaries for your review. Are there any questions in particular?
I have no question. I'll go with you.
Okay, and where do we go from here, Mr. Farabee?
Well, at this point, we are just providing the information as so everyone has a clear understanding of how to go about the disparity study. It could be if the council did decide that it's something that we wanted to look into, then we would go about ironing out all the key steps, such as the RFP, what exactly we would be looking for in a disparity study. And one of the past reports we've done, what is key with disparity studies is if you are planning to engage in them, you should take considerable time to go ahead and prepare all your current in-house information. I've learned that from other cities that have done them, so that when the vendor is chosen, everything will be available.
Mr. Garrity.
Yeah, I think at this point, we're really seeking direction from council. If the council wants to proceed with an MWBE or disparity study, I think there are things that value it would bring to us. Number one, we would find out really what the actual goals can be now. As we've mentioned before, those might be higher, they might be lower. There's always risk in doing that. And it's not just a number, as this council understands, it's not just simply a comparison of the population. You're looking at historically underused businesses. So depending how many minority and women businesses are there will depend on what rates we can use, what goals we can use. But the other thing I think it would bring to us to help is just an independent assessment of all of our efforts. So that as you look at the other cities, part of the study by the outside vendors is a complete assessment of this city staff and city council's processes, procedures, everything from education to outreach to review. So I think there's some value that could be added, but it is a very expensive undertaking.
Do you have any questions? Okay, Ms. Light has a question.
Is one bound by the outcome of the study? I mean, we've got pretty high standards as is, and if it comes in lower, are we bound
Yes.
to low? Oh.
Because you'll be, if it comes in lower, then we've documented what it is, and if we have a higher standard, we're subject to a legal challenge by a contractor.
Well,
You were next. Yeah. Did you get your question answered?
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Go ahead.
One of the questions that was asked when we asked for additional information was specifically what were some of those recommendations within. I like that.
I like that too.
But what were some of the specific recommendations within some of those studies that were done in those cities? And I didn't, maybe I read
Well,
too fast.
in each study, in the executive summaries which have been provided, you have the key findings and the recommendations. They all have it in that section. And so what we did in the chart, pulled out some of the key top recommendations that we saw, as well as we looked them up or contacted the offices to see if some have been implemented. So if you see in some cities they have, raised their goals for professional services, or they have implemented some new ordinances to match up with those recommendations given in the report.
And based upon this information that you see here, based upon our practices, how does these things and the recommendations within these cities line up with our practices?
Well, a number of the studies have very similar recommendations that have been made. The recommendations, such as the ones seen here, are what cities tend to do beyond their normal way of doing business. Some of the recommendations given are things that could definitely be added here that we don't currently have. And by having the disparity study, it gives you legal precedence to actually input those into your regulations.
Like,
Yeah.
sorry, like what? Just to.
Yeah.
Such as Garrity said, if you were to lower the goals or higher or increase the goals, such as in some of the reports they gave you aspirational goals broken out by the services, which could be subcontracting or could be professional services. And based upon the numbers and the findings, they could tell you that you should be reaching 11, such as in Greensboro, 11% of your professional services contracts should go to MWBEs based on those that are available. And so it gives you that ability to support numbers rather than just pulling out, we would like to see 10, 15, 20%.
Go ahead, Ms.
Still on that, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Still on that same one, such as one of the recommendations in the city of Greensboro, selective use of vendor rotation to expand utilization of NWBE groups and to limit habitual repetitive use of incumbent majority firms. increase MWB participation through a small business enterprise program utilizing race and gender-neutral alternatives to address disparities in purchases. Set aspirational goals by business category, not rigid project goals based on relative MWB availability. I'm saying specifically on those items compared to our current practice, how do we line up with
Well,
with
the
those?
SBE, the gender neutral, we don't currently do because based on the state's program, it is based upon minority and women. To institute such programs, you have to have a disparity study. Greensboro, that was a recommendation. They did not take that recommendation to be gender neutral. The city of Charlotte did do it, and that program is backed up by the disparity study. And another one you had, the vendor rotation is not something that we currently do on our projects, but that's something, if that's a recommendation, that could be done.
And so these would have to come from the disparity study. We couldn't just institute these without, in terms of things that we would want to do.
Well,
to
that would be
increase-
a legal question, I would say.
Looking at the chart, looking at some of these recommendations, I think you do need the outcome of the disparity study to support the numbers, and that's the whole purpose of the study. Some of these recommendations, I can look at more carefully to see if in fact you do the study to support them. But some of them, like the numbers themselves, I think you would.
Okay.
But there's probably at least half of it you could do without the disparity study. If council wants, we can go back and bring back a report next month. For these recommendations, here's the ones that we're already doing, here's the ones that we could do without a disparity study, and here's the ones that would require.
Yeah, Ms. Burke.
Thank you. I was going to ask, I was going to comment similar to Councilman Montgomery, but I was going to ask, was there any city doing anything similar to what we're doing that you know about?
Well, such as these cities, the city of Greensboro's program is very similar to ours. It has the compliance aspect, which is the tracking, and they also have built and they're increasing their business development, where they're really working with the MWBs to start their businesses. In the area, I think that probably is the most one similar to us. Charlotte is not very similar since they have a gender-neutral program.
And the comment, Mr. Chairman, that the city manager made, if we could look at the ones around the country and the things that they're doing and what we're doing, if we don't have to, I'm not saying not to do a study, but if we don't have to do a study, then I don't think we should. But if we find that we're not doing some things, then we do it. But I think we need to have, the report is good, don't misunderstand me, but it needs to show, to me, these disparities and what we could do, and then come up with what we ought to be doing with the recommendation. I think it needs a little more study.
Okay, Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Councilmember Burke. Thank you, Mr. Faraday and Mr. Garrity, for your input, and the other council members. In business, and that's basically what we're talking about, is business. In business, you always look for ways to do things better. We can accept the fact that we're good at what we do here in Winston-Salem. We have a great staff, but every day in business, we can do better. And I feel that this disparity study is one of those instances that we can do better. The only way you can prove anything right, wrong, and different is with data. It's okay if people give their subject matter expert opinions, but at the end of the day, good business is based off data. And I, Mr. Chair, would ask that this committee consider moving forward with taking requests for proposals to do this disparity study. Mr. Faraday, Mr. Garrity, and staff have presented us what we have been asking for months. Bring us the information, which is data, to show what other cities are doing. It is incumbent upon us as council to read it and to understand it and to ask staff if we have any questions. But I feel like the city of Winston-Salem, don't get me wrong, again, we have been good at what we do, people, but there are some holes in our boat that we need to repair and we need to fix. And I think one of these is, again, that a disparity study will help make us more transparent to the citizens, more transparent to the minorities and the women businesses, that we are willing and ready to do fair business with them. I do not feel, and maybe I'm wrong, somebody bring me some more data, I do not feel that as a city that we are doing all that we can do to make it a level, somewhat playing field, an opportunity for other businesses to become a part of all of this money that's out here, because history will bear out if we go back and collect all the data. Our minorities and women's have not benefited from all of the contracts and services that this city provides to the city of Winston-Salem, and I personally would like to see that, again, breaking of verbs, be better.
Go ahead, Ms. Burke.
I did introduce the MWBE, and we struggled, and I never thought we had the best one. And I think when we look at it, my understanding, before we go into saying a study, I want to ask you a question, City Manager. If we were to get someone to come in, put out the proposals, that would be staff time. Once we say we're going to do it, then that's when we start looking at the finances involved. I'm the first one to say that it has been difficult. It has. Minority businesses had such a difficult time trying to overcome certain things. And some of the other businesses who were already in business were doing a little bit better. And I think that minorities should get, as I said some years ago, and the mayor was sitting right there. We was trying to do that East Winston Shopping Center. And we brought some people together. And it was majority of white businessmen. And I didn't see any white business women at that one. There was no black business. And I said to those men, the same way you want something, we too want part of that pie. So I still have that same desire for us to do better. And I'm not saying that I would not support what you're talking about, but I want us to bring in a little more information about so we can just see how well as we, and I hear you say the city has done a good job, but could we have done better? That has been my question, in how we invited business people to get involved, minority business and women.
I got a few questions. And by the way, I have about halfway through reading this. This is a lot, and I'm trying to read it slowly to comprehend it. But first off, I was a little surprised that what they looked at were two categories of items we purchased. One is subcontractors, and of course we do the contract with the general contractor who subs it, and the other one was professional services. To me, the biggest category, and by the way, in this packet today, there's about $4 million worth of purchasing in here. It does not fall into, I don't think, either one of those categories. We buy things. We buy gasoline, we buy diesel fuel. I think in here is a contract for 6 of the booms.
Right.
I call that a thing. It's a piece of equipment.
Sanitation loaders.
Sanitation trucks, things of that sort. So, and I know in our quarterly package that we get, Lee, that you send out is a list, I think, all items that are purchased over $25,000.
20,000.
And it's just, it's software, it's hardware, it's computers, it's trucks, it's cars, it's gasoline, it's whatever it may be. And I was once surprised that that whole category was not addressed in any of this, it looks like.
In the reports?
Yeah.
Generally, for experience from here in Winston-Salem, they tend to be fewer suppliers that are minority or women-owned, particularly of large equipment, machinery, such as you mentioned. In the reports, the key things they look for are subcontracting, because that's the construction, what tends to have goals or may not have goals, as well as professional services. There are in the report, some of them maybe reference to supplies or materials, but it tends to be very difficult in most areas of the country to find minority companies that do that.
And that was the point I was going to make. If you really follow what we purchase, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm saying at least 95% of what we buy there is, when we vote on it, there is never, and that's dollar amount, not number of votes, there's never a minority bid. The two biggest ones in here today, I don't believe there are. Again, not many people make garbage trucks.
Most materials that are purchased from minority companies tend to be those in-house, such as your office supplies, some of your information technology, but definitely not the big things.
The second comment, and I'll read it from, and this just happens to be from the Charlotte, and again, I haven't made it but through two of the cities. The study does not recommend MWBE prime contractor goals are set aside for several reasons. Number one, there's limited evidence that Charlotte directly discriminates against MWBE prime contractors in this study. Secondly, North Carolina law, bid statutes, and related procurement rules severely limit the ability of Charlotte to set aside. I won't read the rest of it. My point there is I've sat here for 13 years, and we have, with very, very few exceptions, always have, by law, have to take the low bidder. There's been a few times that we've thrown out the low bid because they didn't bid the right thing. I think, Greg, I think there's somebody that always bids on those leaf trucks, and it's always the wrong truck or something, so I know that's one we throw out. But we tend to do that, and but a couple comments. One, to me, is the problem is a lack of minority and women businesses, not opportunities. So, again, so many times there is no one even bidding it. So obviously, if you don't bid, you can't play. Number two, I do like the idea that we've got 4 studies of cities that are similar to us. Memphis is a little bit bigger, Charlotte is too, but the others pretty close. It would be nice, and I think this has been alluded to here, to cherry pick. You know, they spent $300,000 per city to cherry pick the recommendations, and from what I've read so far, they tend to be fairly uniform.
Somewhat, yes.
Somewhat. So let's go ahead and use the free to us advice they paid a lot of money for. For example, and I do happen to have a close relative that is a subcontractor in the construction business. Payment terms, for example, is very important, and it talks about that in here, that smaller businesses tend, and I happen to own a small business, I can speak from personal experience, we're not as well capitalized sometimes as bigger business. So prompt payment, and that's addressed in here, particularly in the construction business with retainage, and you folks out there that don't deal with it, that's the money that's held back until everything's done. And again, my close relative that's in the business says he goes months and months and months waiting on that retainage. That can be a deterrent for that. Other example I liked in here was partnering. Are there some minority, non-minority type firms that can partner in, or whatever you want to call it? But I think it would be good, and some of these studies are several years old, it seems like, if we could visit with those cities and ask them what's worked and what hasn't worked. Because again, at least sitting in this chair, and y'all have all been here a while, Ms. Brooks has been here longer than I have, when it's brought to us, here's who bid, here's the low bidder, and if that bidder is qualified by law, we have to accept it. And the exception is the professional services where, at least with architectural and those type folks, we have to go out and ask for proposals, and we pick the most qualified. Now, sometimes we're building something that a lot of folks can do, other times we don't. For example, we've rebuilt 2 water plants since I've been here. I can't imagine there being many engineered firms in the country that specialize in water treatment plants. That would be a very, very specialized, and I don't know who did it, but I bet they came from a long ways away to do it. So I guess my thoughts, one, I'd like a little more time to read the rest of it, but and again, I think, Ms. Burke, maybe you mentioned this, let's take a look at what the other cities have, not just what the study does, but they've had a few years to try it out, to talk with these cities and ask them what has worked and what hasn't worked. Okay. And that would be of interest. And I do have some specific questions, but I'll deal with those later. Well, let me ask you one last one, and I'm rambling here. I did notice this SBE, which is a small business enterprise. How is that different from what we do? What's that animal look like?
SBE means instead of, say, setting goals for minority business, you're setting goals for small business based on net profits or revenue or something like that. So it could include majority-owned and minority-owned firms. The idea there is that by providing opportunity to small businesses in general, you are providing greater opportunity to minorities that happen to be in that category.
Now, is that an either-or? Because I don't think we do anything with SBE now, do we?
No, we are strictly gender and race conscious.
Thank you. Anyway, those are all my thoughts. I'll go back to Mr. Montgomery.
2 things. One, I think in terms of looking at the actual bidding process and a comment, I think, off of Councilman McClark's in reference to the process. One thing that I've heard consistently from individuals in the business community, particularly individuals in the minority business community, both from professional services as well as other services provided where you actually go through that process, is that because for so long they have bid on things and have not received contracts, many of them have just stopped bidding because they were not getting the contracts. And so they felt that that was time wasted attempting to put bids on in places where they weren't getting the contracts. And so they focused their attention and time in other places and sometimes other communities outside of Winston-Salem where they were able to successfully get the contracts. But going back to the point both Councilman Adams and Clark stated, one, I think from Adams in terms of the point of looking at it, I think it's a great thing for us to take a look at, and if at the point we come to making a recommendation, and if it is on the point of wanting to do this, is something that I think I'm interested in. But when I came in council back in 2009, I don't know if city manager members or others, one thing I was pushing for at that time was an efficiency study. I wanted us to do an efficiency study to look at our services overall. And, one of these cities here, actually Columbus, South Carolina, had completed an efficiency study, and forwarded that to city manager and staff, took a look at that, and did just that. They pulled out some of the things we weren't doing, particularly one instance, we had an option on individuals opting for direct deposit. Everybody wasn't on direct deposit, but then we made it policy that everybody had to move on to direct deposit, which did what? Save the city money in that process. So I think that the points that's been made by the committee in terms of looking at this can yield some opportunities for us to increase our impact without having to go to full stint of the actual study. But if we come back and that information tells us that, hey, we need to take a look at that even deeper, that's something I'm still interested in.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Burke, I think you have a comment.
I can go back and tell you that there were sometimes quite a few minority businesses, small businesses, and they would come to City Hall and ask us at the council meeting about wanting to do business with the city. What happened, and this is no reflection on no one who's working now, so don't get all up in the air. Some of the people who work for the city in that department made it difficult for small business people. And they just got tired of continuing to come and being told no. They treated them as if though they were not supposed to. Here we have a program. And we didn't have enough support from the council to move things ahead because we felt it was unfair. And of course they would continue to say, the attorney, well, if you take it here, then it won't be able to follow through. There were different things that would say like it would hinder them rather than help them in moving further and getting a better understanding. So you have had, and then that group who used to look at them, was it a small committee business committee that we had here?
We still have them.
Well, they would come and make a recommendation not to accept them, and these small business people did not have enough time to keep running down trying to get a job. So it was awfully difficult, and we as a city, some who worked in that department, helped to make it hard for them to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Light.
I agree that we need more time to study this. And I also would very much like to see what the city manager suggested, a sort of comparison of what we have, what other cities, what these other recommendations have suggested, and what we could pull from that before we go into a full-blown and expensive study.
Okay, I'll ask Adam.
Just very quickly, it's picking up on something Councilmember Burke said. I've seen over the years, we've had a number of workshops and efforts with minority businesses to help them get involved with city contracting, and we've had some successes that some of the particular subcontractors got so strong that they stopped doing business with the city because it's easier to do business in the private sector, so they backed away from that. But the other thing is, as Councilmember Montgomery said, there's already some things that we're already starting to click on, and city manager just sent out a memo today to employees about purchasing policies that will support what you're saying about buying. So I think I certainly agree with the suggestion of let's look and see if we can cherry pick some of these recommendations.
Okay. Ms. Adams.
And last comment, thank you, Chair. If I'm not wrong, we asked for that when we asked for this. See, sometimes, again, we do so much. We forget if nobody's holding everybody accountable and tracking what we do, we just kind of repeat it or we just drop it and hopefully hope nobody will remember. I remember that we asked for the comparison when we asked for the report from the other cities. I specifically asked for a matrix that shows Winston and what we do and what everybody else does. And I'm being sarcastic right now. We call it data. I think if we're not going to move on this again, we like to spend time thinking about stuff. I got that. We need to put together a plan, a study plan that's been cherry-picked from the information that we got. I'm in agreement of that. But I'm not in agreement if we move this down the road like we've been doing, kicking a can for several months. This has been in the loop now for almost a year, if not more. And I want to see us get better at this. We need to move on this. If we don't want to spend the money, I got that. But we need to go ahead, as some of you have already said, and I agree with that since we're not going to move it, that we take the suggestions and put together our own prototype of a study and use the examples that we have here and get our data to bring forth to this committee. Okay. It is now August. I would hope we could do that by October.
Okay. Ms. Burke?
Yeah, and we know there's been a struggle by the fact that things have not been moving right. That's why we had to take a look at the department, and the city manager has changed that some to give more attention and to be fair with minorities. And I don't want to give an example of Ogburn and Liberty Street and the mess that was made in those two sections. And that came out of small business, out of someone who's supposed to be in charge, not following through properly and taking lightly minority, the MWBE.
Okay. I'm going to try to summarize everything that's been said here. First off, recommend we keep it in committee. We just got it. I got mine Friday. I think the package must have been delivered very, very late Thursday or Friday. Friday morning when I went out for the paper, it was there. But anyway, so we've just gotten it. Give us a chance to read it a little more. I do like the idea. Let's take the cities that are in here and maybe show some comparisons. And again, they had the two categories, the subcontracting and the professional services. They do have percentages in here, and I think we can generate the same percentages as far as, and then take a look, maybe just list the various recommendations that came out from the cities, and then maybe, again, follow up with the cities, because some of these recommendations are several years old, and see what's worked and what hasn't worked for them. I would also ask one last thing. I would like a list, and I guess we use the state's official list of minority and women firms. If we could just get a list of everyone in Forsyth County, let's just see how big a pool we're talking about. But I would personally like to see that. And then we'll get a report back at the appropriate time. In October may be good because that would give you 2 months. And let's just see if we can use other people's money to come up with some good recommendations.
Okay.
All righty?
One other comment
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make. When you do give this report, not that we cannot read, all of us sitting on this council can read, can understand, but Mr. City Manager, when people give us reports, to give all this kind, because I remember Councilwoman was going to make it easier for us if we could look at what we're doing, put us beside other cities and show them. You could have easily picked out those things that they were doing and we were not doing. So I think reports need to be made easier, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. All this reading.
I will say, I find it complicated reading. That's why I've had to kind of plod through it. It is fairly...
Mr. Chairman, we'll go one step further. We'll go ahead and, once we finish that review, particularly since we have till October, I will put together what I think the recommendations are based on that review, so you have that up front.
Gotcha. As
the mayor mentioned, I've already made some changes, both in informal purchasing as well as in architectural design services, so we'll be able to show those changes and what else we can do.
Okay. And by the way, let me apologize. The mayor told me earlier it's his mother's 95th birthday.
That's right.
Sure.
And she's his only son, and he's going to take her to dinner. She lives...
He is her only son.
Yeah. What did I say?
She's his only.
No, she is not his only son. And she lives up in Wilkesboro, so he's got about an hour drive, and I expect she goes to bed early. So anyway, I think I gave him an excused absence.
Okay. And he is a lawyer's son to his mother.
Okay, we'll now go to C3, please, if somebody could read that.
Item C3, information on requests from Experiment in Self-Reliance.
Mr. Brooks, you want to give us a rundown on this?
Good afternoon.
Good
This
afternoon.
is just to make you aware of an item that we'll be bringing to you next month regarding Experiment and Self-Reliance, who owns the Spring Street Apartments. The complex consists of 8 two-bedroom units that currently is used for housing transitional homeless individuals, and they want to convert it to permanent housing. The Spring Street Apartments were rehabbed back in 93, I'm sorry, with a 15-year term loan that was extended in 2003 to perpetuity. Because of the changes in the Hearth Act now, ESR is requesting to change it from transitional housing to permanent housing. There is a balance in the home funds which were used for this project. The affordability restrictions on that expired in 2008. They're requesting that the balance of the home funds, which is $27,859, be forgiven since the original $65,000 acquisition loan has no end date, and that it be due and payable if the property is sold or changes hands in any way. ESR is here if you care to.
Yeah, I see Ms. Wellman sitting there.
Any questions?
Would you like to come up, or do you have any comments you'd like to make? And if you'll state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Tawana Wellman Roebuck. My home address is 570 Oxford Street in Winston-Salem. And primarily I wanted to talk about Experiment and Self-Reliance served as the lead in the 90s as it relates to transitional housing provided for the working homeless. And so we actually own and operate 3 other properties, 5th Street, Spring Street, and Burton Street. And so to this date, we've continued to provide services for the needed citizens in our community around housing for homeless. And it is our goal to realign our Spring Street location so that it best serves and aligns with funding going forward, such as the Hearth Act has indicated. I will pause to see if you have additional questions. It's an effort for our organization to continue our mission and our services for the people that we serve.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Now, this is just for information only, Mr. Brooks. This is going to come back formally next month.
Correct.
But is there any questions or comments from any council members? Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Brooks, thank you, Ms. Wellman, again, for all that the ESR does in the community, and thank you for headquartering in the North Ward. Shout out. Mr. Brooks, the total money that we're talking about for giving here is about, what, $92,859, both of them combined? I mean, that's basically what we're doing. We're talking about forgiving the $27,000 and also forgiving the balance of the loan, which is $65,000 something, right?
Now, the balance of the loan would remain as it is, and it would become due and payable if the property is sold or transferred. So we would still have an encumbrance on that amount. So if ESR should ever decide to get rid of this property, then that would become due and payable, at which time council could make the decision to extend if you chose to at that time.
Okay.
But for now, it's just forgiving the balance of the 27.
Okay, and I guess the only other request I have again is, and we're working on a worksheet, Mr. Page, is when these types of items come to the Finance and Council, we need that worksheet because I need to understand where the original funds came from and how this transaction is going to impact our business. I just need to see it. And like Mr. Clark said, we got millions of dollars in this package, and we just need to understand it better, as Councilmember Burke said, all of this information. If I could just get it in a simplified worksheet, this is what we gave them, this is what they want us to do, and this will be the impact of the funding that we gave them, okay?
Yes, I think the form was a very good form with modifications, and you will have it by the next round of committee meetings.
Thank you. Move for approval.
Wait a minute. Oh, it's no motion. It's just information.
Oh,
Go ahead, Ms. Burke.
sorry.
I was going to say that some of us did attend the opening of the ESR new headquarters in Councilwoman Adams' ward. And when we look at what ESR has done, it has helped us with the homeless. It has also trained people to be better homemakers and helped to train people the importance of education and to be productive. And I say this for the minutes so that Ms. Wellman, who has worked very hard, she's been strong no matter which blows she received from some of the council people, she still stood strong for what she believed in. And if you had been at that opening, to have seen the diversity and the people in this community, northeast, southwest, who has taken on a big financial responsibility to make that headquarters what it is today. So I just wanted to say that again, Ms. Wellman.
Have y'all moved to your new building?
That's what we.
Okay, that's what we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Oh, I go by it
What's
regularly.
the name of the street again, so everybody will know it.
Yeah.
Dominion.
I get a biscuit at Bojangles every now and back there.
Okay.
Anyway. Okay, that's just for information, so we will continue that, and it'll be formally brought up next month. Folks, we had C5 on the consent agenda, on the consent motion. Mr. Bonham has showed up, so I'm going to, if no objection, pull that back off.
Okay.
Mr. Bonham, if you'd like to come up, have a seat. You can sit right there. Yes, sir. Right here.
Anyway.
The hot seat.
It's not a trick chair.
Oh, that's all right.
I got this button, I push it. And anyway.
I'm good.
Did you get a copy of what we have in our agenda tonight?
No, I did not get a copy.
And I put it right where nobody can reach it. Hang on a minute.
That's all right.
She gave Councilwoman Light.
What we had in our agenda book was just for information purposes, and you have what we have. I was going to ask, and I see our general counsel's here tonight. Ms. Carmen, do you have any update in your area? I know you were contacting HUD on some various questions.
Right, I did contact HUD, I did forward HUD some information, additional information they requested, I'm still waiting on a response.
So you're still working the HUD. She was contacting HUD as far as the availability of funds.
Yeah, I would just like to.
You may say whatever you'd like. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Give your name and address for the record, please.
Jimmy Bonham, 1617 East 14th Street,
Okay.
Winston-Salem, North Carolina,
Please, sir.
27105. I'm just basically here trying to get the name of the name or a copy of the query sent to HUD in regards to the request for this information, if possible.
Okay. Ms. Carmen, our attorney, can provide whatever you'd like there.
Good enough.
Okay. As I said, there's no motion or anything tonight. This is just
No.
an update from Mr. Brooks.
Okay, and I understand.
Okay?
So, and I can get that information from the attorney?
Yes.
All right, tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We will now move. The next item I had was C8. If y'all turn to C8, if somebody could read that, please.
Item C8, resolution authorizing the execution of a scheduling agreement with the Arts Council for Winston Square Park.
I was on that.
Okay. Well, Mr. Grant, you want to give us a 2-minute
Yes. thank you.
rundown?
The Arts Council of Winston-Salem of Forsyth County has a vision for helping the community become a preeminent destination for arts and culture. They have approached us with an interest in managing all the programming of Winston Square Park and also helping to maintain Winston Square Park as an extension of its downtown campus. I might point out as well, the Arts Council prior to, I believe, 2007, they were managing Winston Square Park at that particular time. The city took it back, I think, around 2007. We've been managing that park ever since. I know that Mr. Sparrow, Jim Sparrow, is here as well, and he can answer any questions as well.
Okay. Ms. Adams, I think you
Yes.
this one.
Yes.
You want to ask?
Thank you. I just need to know or understand again, I know we've probably done this in the past, but how is this going to impact the citizens of Winston, those people that, again, want to use the park, and they got to go through what process now if the Arts Council is the manager of the park? Mr. Grant.
Certainly, I'm not going to try to speak for the Arts Council. Let me just kind of tell you what a little bit of the history has been. I arrived here, I believe, in August of 2003. In that particular time, the Arts Council was managing Winston Square Park. They were not only scheduling activities there, but they were also receiving the funding for the park at that particular time. I believe that the fee schedule that we have now was the same fee schedule that was in place prior to the time that they were managing it. Our fee schedule now for Winston Square Park is a block of 4 hours. I believe it's $150. So for a half hour to 4 hours, you pay $150. So I think in conversation and with working through the agreement for this Arts Council, they are willing to keep that fee as is and provide scheduling activities there as well as providing other amenities in the park. But I will not speak for the Arts Council. I'll let Mr. Sparrow speak.
And Mr. Sparrow, thank you for coming, and welcome to Winston.
Thank you.
If the Arts Council will manage it, we own it, they rent it, they keep the money. Okay, so who's responsible for the upkeep of the park? The Arts Council?
In this particular agreement, the city would still be mowing, trimming, and blowing, landscaping. We would also continue to have park crews go by daily and deal with trash. If anything happened to the fountain or the lights in the park as it currently exists, that expense will fall back upon the city.
Okay. Last question, Councilmember Burke. Councilmember Clark, needs some prior history when we bring stuff like this to the table for council members. For us that don't know all the history, I do remember that, but that was then and this is now. I'm not against it. It's just that I may want to go rent a park, get a park, come to the city. I want to manage it for you, but I'm going to keep all the money that I rent it out to. And if this is being done, everybody needs to understand, can other organizations and businesses do likewise in our community? So I would ask for that information, Chair.
Okay. A little history on the history of
and how we plan to go forward with this. Again, that was then, this is now. We're living in some dire economic times, and everybody's looking for a way to make money. So if the Arts Council, which is a nonprofit, for profit, can do it, why can't we allow other groups and organizations to do it? And if it's not in our ordinances or policies to do it, we need to look at how we make this consistent. That's what I'm asking.
Okay. Ms. Burke.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions. The time, is this the same park we're talking about where there was an accident there?
Yes.
All right, we have another accident. Who's going to be sued?
According to the draft agreement, there's a certain amount of general liability insurance that the Arts Council would have to maintain. I believe that's $1 million general liability coverage. Also, there's a particular section in the draft agreement that relates to the fact that particular arts or exhibits cannot be left in the park past 1 week. So there are specific things in the draft agreement, council member, that relate back to the responsibility of the Arts Council and of the city.
And of course, welcome, sir. I'm glad you're here. But the other question I wanted to ask, are we making any money from this?
Council member, if we go back and look at the last 9 years, I think the highest amount of revenue that we've been able to generate from Winston Square Park is about $3,500.
Now, because you really haven't done a whole lot in trying to motivate the use of, not you, but I'm saying in general, the use of that park. And I agree with Councilwoman Adams. We need to, Mr. Chairman, we need to keep this in this committee and have a little more study. She didn't say that part, but we're letting another one of our facilities go. We don't have a convention center anymore for citizens. And we pay for the operation of that out of their tax dollars, private business. And we don't have a Coliseum anymore. And we're not going to have a Bowman Gray Stadium anymore. So what are we leaving for citizens? And since downtown is becoming used and people are being stimulated, I think we need to have a little more information, Mr. Chairman. I'm not saying that I'm against this, but I need more than someone to bring this today as if though we're going to move with business. Because if that park had been used, not no reflection on you and anyone else, we could have made money. And if you have something that's making money, a man told me one time, if I'm making money, and I tell people, you know, things that I have, why I'm going to let you have it when I'm making money? I'd be a fool.
I want a park. Okay, by the way, Mr. Taylor, we're on C8.
I'm with you.
Mr. Montgomery.
My question is on similar lines, particularly within the contract and agreement in managing that for city events and programs. Would the city be required to pay for events that the city would like to have there, such as youth events in the summertime? During that biannually, when we have the Black Theater Festival, the park is oftentimes used for other events. How will that work through that management process?
The city would not incur a fee to use the park. The city would just have to, I believe, per the agreement, make reservation through the Arts Council. But the city would not incur any cost for any city activities that would take place at the park.
And on that same sense, and as I hear it, this will more than likely stay in committee, it would be my thought that events that we know might occur in the future, that we take precedent to get on the calendar in advance of those, to make sure that there's not already, somebody comes in and there's a conflict that exists there, that we might, although there are not a whole lot of those that happen, I think there may be a few of them that may happen in there, to make sure that we get those dates. And otherwise, in terms of that history piece, again, on understanding, knowing why, if it had been managed before, what was the reason that the city came back and took it back in terms of from that management, that'd be something that I would like to have that information on.
Unless I hear objection, we'll keep it in the committee for a month. And I hear questions like, what's the history of it? Maybe why they had it, why we took it back, what's the arrangements? You've heard the various things. Is there any time sensitivity here? Is that okay?
There's no immediate time sensitivity. There are programs that we're working on now that we could go through the normal scheduling with. Just for the intent that was brought up regarding, we didn't ask this because we believe it's a money-making venture. We did it basically to make sure that there was programming and activity, and would be willing to look at this as just a service that we're trying to provide for that neighborhood and community without taking away. So we didn't look at it as a profit center, and there is no immediate time sensitivity.
Would you mind giving your name and address for the record?
Sure. My name is Jim Sparrow. I'm the President and CEO of the Arts Council, 206 North Spruce Street, Winston-Salem.
Thank you, sir. So that will be held in committee, and we'll get a little more information. Thank you, Mr. Grant. C9.
Item C9, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina to administer the city's health insurance plan.
Ms. Caruth, would you like to give the committee a few, and let me just give an introduction. We do not look at the health insurance every year, but every couple of years, because usually it's a multi-year agreement. And Ms. Adams and I have met 2 or 3, 4 times on this. It's fairly complicated. It's important. It's a lot of money at stake. So just want to let you know that we have been meeting with them, and we are ready to make a recommendation. So go right ahead.
Okay. This, as he said, we have been looking at our health insurance contractor. We've put it out for bid. We had bids from a number of vendors. We ended up narrowing that down to 2, which were Blue Cross Blue Shield and United Healthcare. Both vendors had proposals that were very similar. Either one could provide the service. The distinction that the thing that made Blue Cross Blue Shield distinctive was their performance guarantees. They put a significant amount of their ASO fees at risk, 25% to be exact, and we felt like it shows their commitment to provide a good level of service, quality customer service for our employees and our retirees. So we're recommending Blue Cross Blue Shield as the vendor for both health and pharmacy administration, insurance administration for 15, 16, and 17. We're asking you to approve a contract for 15 with an option for us to renew for 16 and 17.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Ms. Adams.
Comment. Again, thank you, Mrs. Caruth, along with your staff and everybody that worked on this. It just shows, again, what we can do as an organization to improve the business that impacts our employees' lives as well. And I think it was a great experience. I think going forward, that we need to do more of this, because don't get me wrong, you guys do a great job, but everybody doesn't know everything, and everybody looks at everything with different eyes. So I think that's what helped this process more, is that we had enough eyes looking at it that could ask some different questions from a different perspective. And, Mr. Chair, I move for approval.
I second.
I would like to say I also endorse it as one of the members of the subcommittee. I will tell you, it is very difficult to compare insurance things because it is not an apples to apples. The biggest cost is the cost when you go to the hospital, the doctor, whatever. And they can guesstimate what Blue Cross's rates are at Baptist and what United Healthcare's are, but you don't know. So the consultant we used did the best guess, but you don't know. The other thing that I was really impressed with Blue Cross was the percent of the system does kick out the folks that are using a lot of services, maybe have some type of chronic condition, and they do have a counselor that helps them with it. And they had a very, very high rate of folks that had actually signed up. And my mind's slipping me what they called that particular service.
Disease management.
Disease management. And the last thing I liked about it was you do get a much better rate if you're in network versus out of network. And I think it was over 99% of the folks that went to doctors and hospitals were in a network one. And so, anyway, I do endorse it. And anyway, Ms. Burke.
Yes, I liked it because they made us aware that they wanted to do business with us, and they met with individual council people. And, of course, we commend the two of you for working hard with them as a subcommittee. And also, it sits in the Northeast Ward, and I'm very pleased that they're in our ward.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Ms. Caruth, I just want to make sure that I've got this. We are approving today with the Finance Committee and then the full council on Monday. We're approving year 14, 15, and then there's an option to renew in years 16 and 17. At that particular time, the option to renew comes back to the Finance Committee, then to the City Council to renew, or is that something that you do outside of?
We do health insurance on a calendar year, so you're approving 15, calendar year 15, it would start in January, with the option for the city manager to renew for 16 and 17. The rates are there. The rates are the same for 15 and 16, and there's a maximum of a 3% increase for 17. So if you approve 15 and give the manager authorize the manager to negotiate for 16 and 17, that's what we're proposing.
Okay, Mr. Manager, is as I've heard, is your option to renew. It's just your discretion for years 16 and 17.
That's correct. Typically in healthcare contracts, for as long as I've been involved in them, they are typically really a 3-year contract. In order to get the rates that we got from the bidders, we had to use 3 years to get that kind of guarantee. So it's pretty standard that you have a 3-year contract with more or less an automatic renewal, but it gives us the option, if for some reason they're not meeting their performance guarantees, that we could cancel it. And I would keep council apprised of that.
Yeah, I was going to say I hadn't had or heard any concerns with Blue Cross Blue Shield, but if anything arises, if you'll keep us updated.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Montgomery, you have a comment?
Just, I would request that at the time of whatever renewal takes place, request that just that information comes, as well as understanding and knowing the at the time of that renewal, what has been the % increase in healthcare costs at that time, for we know that is currently changing, and that right now we're experiencing some of the slowest growth in healthcare costs, which has impact on that. So I'd like to see that whenever we look at renewals.
Okay, Ms. Burke.
And do we keep in contact with the employees, those who's retired, as well as those who are working? Because I did emphasize their input is most important. And from experience, I'm a Blue Cross. I do my business with Blue Cross. And those of us who have retired, we find that staying with them is better. Especially if some people have chronic illnesses, it's better.
I will say that probably the biggest change is right now, if you have city coverage, you have an Express Scripts card for your prescriptions, and next year it'll all be Blue Cross. And I will say that is one area where we didn't get many calls, but the areas we did was with that splitting of service, and this contract puts them back together.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. C9 passes. We'll now go to C10F.
C10F, resolution authorizing final payment for the Kinston Road culvert replacement contract.
Would you like
Yes.
give us a 2-minute summary here?
Okay, the Kingston Road Culvert Replacement Project is a piping project. The general contractor was D.H. Griffin Infrastructure. They agreed to goals at the beginning of the project, 5% minority, 5% women. During the course of construction, some line items were removed, resulting in, excuse me, allergies, resulting in less hauling from one of their minority firms. They have a lot of material purchases in this project. There weren't any local firms that provided those materials. Most of them come from a large manufacturer, Ferguson. And so they did find an out-of-town company, a woman company, they thought they could get those materials from, but due to they were supposed to come from Ferguson through that company, there was a pay order issue. And so they contacted the MWBE office saying that they had a concern and they weren't able to get those materials from them, which they are supposed to do if there are any issues. And so they did find, I told them they need to find some other women firms to provide services on the contract to try to make up the participation. They found 2 other firms. Unfortunately, one of them is NCDOT certified as a MWB, but not the hub, which is what we can only count towards our participation. So at the end of the project, their participation is 3% minority, 1.9% women. If they had included that other one, they would have had 3.9% women business. So the project, because they did not meet the goals, went to our MWBE Citizens Committee. We met with the general contractor, discussed the circumstances of the project, and we did feel that given the intervening circumstances, they made a good faith effort to remedy issues they had on the project, and we recommend the final payment.
Okay, so, just a question. I guess I'm puzzled the fact that there are different lists of minority and women-owned businesses, and this person was on one list and not the other. Are there more than 2 lists? Are there other lists?
Well, there are.
Yeah.
The 2 main ones in North Carolina, the hub, historically underutilized business, is what we recognize on our projects, and that's what we utilize to identify everyone. There is an NCDOT certification, which is called disadvantaged business, and that is for highway projects and federally funded projects where we have to use, because of that federal money, use that certification. So they are women business, they are certified. Unfortunately, they don't have the other one, so we can't include them.
We can't. Okay. Any questions, comments, Ms. Adams?
Thank you. I just have 2 questions. One is, because it's not listed here, I see when the contract was voted on by council, but I don't see when the contractor notified us of the issue. When we get reports like this, you give me one date, but I don't know when that other date kicked in that they let us know, and is there a requirement of them vis-a-vis time to let us know when there's a discrepancy or non-compliance? I also needed to know, I thought should have been in the report, was how much was the contract? That would have been, I would have liked to have seen that information as well.
The contract total price was, just a second, I'll tell you.
Can't be August 19th. Yeah, the date's, what is today?
Today is 11th.
This just says August 19th, so it must be, is it 2013 maybe?
I knew y'all would catch that eventually.
The total construction price is $382,000 on the project. And in our MWBE bidders information, which goes into all projects, we say that if any minority firm listed for any reason needs to be replaced, removed, or is non-responsive, it is the duty of the general contractor to contact the office. Once they realized they had an issue, they did contact me directly. I felt that he was very sincere with the issue, and the fact that he did come to our committee meeting, and we had a very lengthy discussion, and we have let them know that we are requiring and looking for more demonstration in regards to MWBE if they have another contract with us.
Yeah, and I don't have an issue with that, Mr. Farabee. I'm just asking, you know, I understand that the contractor would be trying to keep the business. I got that. But what I'm saying is, in the report, you have a date up here that is awarded to them on the 19th of this month. Meaning they get the money, they get the check. Is there a disparity in that date, or is that date correct?
That date should be 2013.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Sorry about that.
It's 2013.
Yes.
So all I'm asking is, okay, is there a timeline? You said immediately. I mean, is it like within 24 hours, 72 hours, 30 days? I mean, when does the person let us know once they are aware of an issue? Is it in our policies? That's what I'm
in the policy. It does not have a time.
I beg your pardon?
It does not have a time date.
And I think we may want to, Attorney Carmen, we may want to look at that, because a person could find out they're not complying and say, well, you know what, I'm going to drag this out for another year. I'm going to get back with them. By then, I'm going to get paid. I might not get all my money, but I'm going to still get paid. What we're doing is we're building in transparency and compliance. And again, when these reports come like this, moving forward, we need to have dates and money in the report. Okay? Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, Mr. Taylor?
Just one quick question, Mr. Farabee. I know that you mentioned that we do use, as a city, two lists, try to be as accurate as we possibly can on those two lists. We use the DOT list and the historically underutilized business list. But I believe it's my understanding that we're not mandated to use either of those lists. It's good to use them, but there is no real requirement that we use either of those lists. Is that correct?
Well, according to our program, we utilize the hub as set forth with the North Carolina program. From my understanding, I don't know if legal has another one, but that's what we utilize. That's the program that's been set up.
And I think it's a good practice. It's good to do that. The reason why I brought that up is, and I think we're starting to do that, but I'd like to see us as a city start to develop our own list as to what businesses are out there that can do the work. And I know at the last minute, if you go looking, it's hard to find. But if we, over time, continue to generate our own list, then it's good to use the DOT and the hub list as a reference. But I think as a city this size and of this caliber, we should be developing and utilizing our own list. And it is your understanding that a good faith effort has been made by D.H. Griffin. So you certify that?
We have recommended that, yes.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Is there a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Is there a second? I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention, so it's 3, 0, and 1. We will now, we still not finished with consent.
No.
C14.
They put a lot in it.
Item C14, consideration of items related to a change order for resurfacing city streets. A, resolution authorizing a change order to Larco Construction, a division of Branscombe Incorporated, for $712,821.96 for resurfacing city streets. And B, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the fiscal year 2014-2015.
Mr. Attorney, can you give us just a quick summary of this?
Mr. Chairman, the city has a policy that if a utility project deteriorates the road conditions as measured by our pavement condition rating system by 20 points or more, that utility has to do a resurfacing of the project at the end, resurfacing of the road at the end of the project. The Utility Commission has done some utility work in the Ardmore area, and there were a number of streets that met that 20% requirement. There were a number of other streets where the conditions were such that there wasn't a 20% reduction, but it made sense for the city to come in and do repairs on those roads because they were in bad shape either before or as a result of the project still didn't have a 20% reduction. And if we let them stay as they were, we would have a lot of resurfaced brand new streets and a lot of streets that were marginally okay. So staff is recommending that those that under the policy the commission is responsible for or a contractor is responsible for be approved as a change order by the city council, funded by the commission, and those others be funded by the city with reserves that we already have in the resurfacing program.
Okay, so the Utilities Commission or the water and sewer folks are paying for most of it, looks like.
That's correct.
Okay. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Turner. I guess, after reading this, might have been an error, might have been my oversight or undersight. The list of the streets that would be, that I don't see them attached. It says that in the report they're attached.
They were left out by mistake. We'll make
Okay.
sure that they're in the agenda book when it goes to the council.
And I'd also like to know how many other instances or areas has this been done? Is Ardmore an anomaly, or is it in the past year, year over year, 2 or 3?
We've done this at least once before under this policy, and we've done this practice 2 or 3 times in the past.
And I'd like to know that other area where that happened at, please. Thank you.
Mr. Montgomery has the comment.
Particularly in the items or actions that may take place while the construction work is going on, are there certain things that are done that can increase the damage to the roads that could not be done, or are there things that the contractors can do to not damage the roads as much in that process? And in that process, if they don't do those things, is there any place in which the contractors become responsible for their practices in any way?
Contractors are responsible for patching the road back to city standards, and so I generally think that they do a good job of not making this an issue, but we have had some conversations about activities of making sure that we don't have patches to sink because of poor compaction or poor soil conditions. But in general, there are things done currently to make sure that we have as good a road surface at the end as possible. But again, if the points drop by 20%, or if the score drops by 20 points, we do require a resurfacing at the end.
Okay, well, I'll get with you another time, because I was looking for a little more deeper in terms of the actual, whether it's the trucks, whether it's the beds, whatever those actions that actually cause the deterioration. What are those actual?
It's the actual cutting of the pavement in order to put in the utility lines that are causing the damage.
Gotcha.
Ms. Burke.
I'll add this to it. In general, I feel that we need to do a better job when streets are being repaired or worked on, going back checking. I think, Mr. City Manager, because if some people would not be alert and make us aware, then the contractors get by with leaving sloppy jobs, for instance, driveways sometimes. And I do feel that we need to do a better job in monitoring this.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Last item on consent is C15. If you read that, please.
Item C15, resolution approving a supplemental engineering agreement with Stemmel Associates, PA, to complete a streetscape master plan and design specifications for the Business 40 US 421 corridor from West 4th Street to east of Church Street.
Mr. Turner, you want to give us a quick update on this one, please?
This is essentially design services from Stemmel Associates for enhancements on Business 40 that could be part of the Business 40 rehabilitation project that will be done by NCDOT. Those enhancements that the city desires to do, we need to identify, and so this is a process that would be used to identify potential design elements that would then be evaluated by the Creative Corridors Coalition, and if approved by them and the City Council, would be rolled into NCDOT's design-build project.
Okay. Ms. Adams, I believe this is yours.
Yeah, it's the last one, too. Anyway, Mr. Turner, I see listed here that there were 3 total consultants for letters of interest. Could we not have had the other 2 listed, or all 3 of them, just like we do on other proposals or bids or whatever?
We can bring that information to the full council, sir.
And I had one more question. I can't think of it. Go ahead. I'll think of it.
Particularly the Stemmel Associates, they had the first part of this contract, correct?
That's correct.
And so in bidding out the first part of this contract, was it assumed that they would get the other parts of the contract?
It's not assumed. We put in the contract that they had the that the city reserved the option to select them for additional work if we found that their original work was good, but it's not assumed.
Right, because I see in the actual assessment pieces that there are points associated, one to past performance, familiarity with the project itself, and those things. So automatically, if they did decently on those, they would score higher than some of the others, even if they had the quality pieces the other people did, in that sense. And was that, in the initial process of the bid, was that clearly stated on that first piece that there was potential, that the city had the option to extend that in the first part to some others?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm hearing a request for the listing of the other two firms, which is the question I had. All right?
And the side-by-side data of what one had and didn't have that might
Yeah,
have.
little bit words on your analysis, how you selected who you did.
Right.
We'll get back with the selection committee and see what they have.
Move
Okay.
for approval.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? I'll second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I'm
We have-
abstaining. I didn't.
We have 2 in favor, 0 opposed, and 2 abstentions. Okay. We will now move to the general agenda. There are 4 items here. Mr. City Manager, the last one is information, and I'm running up against the deadline here. I'm going to concentrate on the first 3, and we may or may not have time to get to G4,
Okay.
which is the funding process. Is that okay if we have to slip a little bit on that one, or is that?
I think there is an issue about timing. Let me ask Mr. Minor, is there, if we delay a month, does it delay the whole schedule? But we can.
Well, let's see where we
Well,
are.
we
in
can.
15 minutes. Okay, G1, please.
Item G1, resolution authorizing the sale of certain city-owned property by private sale to the Goler Community Development Corporation and financing the sale of the land.
Mr. Page, you want to give us a quick summary?
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This item was before you last month. A request from Goler to purchase land for $525,000 and to finance the sale of that purchase through a forgiveness of the net new taxes generated by the project. This proposal would recommend that approximately 80% of the net new taxes generated by the project over a 15-year period would go toward retiring the debt. A couple of questions came up last month that we attempted to address in the proposal that you have before you. One is that under what you have before you, 50% of units would remain as workforce units during the first 15-year period. That's the period that we have the forgiveness of the debt. During the second 15-year period, at least 15% of the units would be made available for workforce housing. So that was one issue, to make sure that it continued past the initial 15 years. And the second issue was where would the funds go, and we're recommending that any new city property taxes received from the project would be put back into the Housing Finance Fund until the $525,000 is replenished.
Okay. I was not here last month, so were questions answered, or are there any additional questions?
One more question, and maybe it's in here. The $525,000, is that less than fair market value, or is that? I know we can do what we do based on the general statute, but
we actually had the property appraised, Councilmember Adams, when we split it off and sold portion to Northwest Child Care Development Center. So this is the residual piece. So it was an appraisal in 2013 that determined the value.
all right, thank you.
I do, and Mr. Suggs, I see you back there today. Welcome. Don't need to provide it today, but for the general meeting, I would like to know a little bit about Laurel Street Residential, kind of who they are, where they're from, experience, et cetera, because we're kind of, the success really depends on their ability to execute.
Right.
So it'd be nice to know something about them. Any other questions, comments, Mr. Montgomery?
Comment in reference to this project. I think that to Goler CDC, I think this is good for them and is good for the city of Winston-Salem in the fact that, one, that area within a plan that had been master planned by Goler is getting to a place where it will be developed. Secondly, concern that I had last month, and that in conversation with Goler and others, we've been able to get to a place where I think is amenable in reference to the affordability. One of my concerns was, in fact, about how do we maintain affordable housing in downtown for an extended period of time. And so with this actual project, one, we have the opportunity to bring affordable housing into the core of downtown and have it there for at least 30 years. And to me, I think that that is something that we should applaud ourselves for in terms of looking not just at the short term, but for the long term, and ensuring that, in my opinion, as housing continues to increase in the inner city, that we make sure that in all areas we have the opportunity for working people who may not qualify to live in some of the properties that Mr. Woods may have, still have the opportunity to have affordability in where they live. And so I think that, one, it's going to be good for Gold, it's going to be good for that community to see new housing coming up, and then it gives us, I think, something that we can model ourselves off in other projects to come.
Thank you. I hear a motion to, excuse me, Ms. Burke.
We can make a motion.
Is there, yeah, let's get a motion. A motion?
Move approval.
Is there a
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Ms. Burke.
Yes, I want to commend Gola for the job they've done. They have partnered with us, and they made a difference in that area. And I want to ask a simple question. This, what was asked of Councilman Montgomery about the rent for a length of time. Have we given any type of assistance to anyone and required that? Have we done something like this before, what this project we're doing today?
We can get a list, Councilman Burke, but yes, we have done similar types of structures. Each project's a little bit different, but we've done something similar to this before.
But and we didn't have, do we have that requirement on them? Is that requirement that you asked about the last time? Did we put that type of requirement?
Yes, they've actually come back and agreed to that.
I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the others, the ones that we've had before that we've done similar.
Yes.
So we tell them about the rent, how long they should have a rent for a length of time for it to meet the needs of the people who want to rent from them.
It's varied by project. On all of our housing projects where we're using housing finance or CDBG, it's mandated. This is a little bit different because it wasn't using housing monies directly, but yes, it has been required on all of our other projects where we use, for example, CDBG housing or home funding.
So we're not asking anything of Gola than we've asked from others.
That is correct.
As long as we're not asking anything from them that we've not asked for others, I can support it. But if I was hearing that we were asking something of them that we had not, then I would have had a problem with that part of it. Because it's hard during this time, and the economy like it is. And every time I see someone building something in this city, whether it's downtown, intersection, northeast, southwest, I commend them. They're taking a big, big step with finances like they are today. And so Gola has done an excellent job.
Okay. Mr. Taylor, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer brief comments, just for the record. I imagine this may be on the consent agenda on Monday. Given the way downtown is growing and expanding, as Councilmember Montgomery mentioned, in order to rent or own housing downtown, it's going to come at a premium cost. I just thank Gola for putting this deal together with the city manager, and all the staff. I think this is a win-win for Gola and the city, and affordable housing is important to this city, especially in the downtown area, so that everybody can enjoy the living room of the city of Winston-Salem, which is downtown.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That is approved. We will now go to G2, please.
Item G2, consideration of items relating to a loan to the Housing Authority of Winston-Salem. A, resolution authorizing a loan to the Housing Authority of Winston-Salem for the former Brown Elementary School in the East Ward. And B, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the fiscal year 2014-2015.
This was at the, come on up, Mr. Brooks, was at the previous meeting. It was, I guess it was 2 meetings ago, because I was here for that one.
Yeah.
We did go back to BB&T, got some additional information, but it really didn't change the plan here.
Correct.
Will you just refresh everyone's memory on what we're talking about here, please?
Yes, this item was brought before the committee before. Hawes is asking for assistance to help with their first phase funding, which includes acquisition and some environmental work for the former Brown Elementary School, which is located on Howland Avenue. They intend to develop that property. The first phase total cost is $439,175,000, of which $100,000 will be provided by Halls. So they're requesting the balance of $339,175 be provided by the city, and we have suggested reducing that amount by $20,000, which would include costs for maintaining the property, keeping it boarded up, and having the grass cut. That will be done. We're recommending that that be done by the city's maintenance crew for that. The second phase of funding would be a request for $381,120 to be used for hazard abatement and demolition costs, but they would not be asking for that until 2015. So the original request is for the $339,175 to assist with the acquisition and environmental abatement.
And this is a loan?
Yes.
To acquire the property, basically?
Yes,
and then,
it will be a 5-year deferred loan payment.
And then we are anticipating at some later date assistance with a construction loan?
That's
like
correct.
That. Okay. Any questions, Mr. Montgomery?
Two things. One, again, just a refresher, a piece of this, that the Housing Authority will be submitting an application for low income housing tax credits, correct? And based upon that, that will really drive the development of this site, particularly looking at senior housing on this site. And one thing that I didn't see within the terms, Mr. Brooks, was something that I brought up 2 months ago in that process, was that as they continue to develop out with this property, to submit something back to the city in reference to the good faith effort of retaining any pieces of it. I know it'd be very difficult depending upon cost analysis of what's there, but that was a request that I had, that they, if they were to demolish all of the current structure there, that comes back to say that, you know, this is the reasons why that took place, in terms of showing that, you know, we couldn't get it done because of this financial reasons or these places. That's something that I would like to see as a part of those terms.
Yes, sir, and I apologize for not having that. We do have some information on that, and it will be provided to you before Monday's meeting.
What does that mean?
Pardon?
I said, what does that mean? Does that mean
You're talking about the fact that the building was historic, and if it's demolished, I think you're requesting that they try to retain a portion of the building. But if they could not retain it, that they provide something other to, I guess, acknowledge the fact that it was an historic site, or it was of an historic nature, that there be something to designate that.
Yes and no. Yes, that in terms of looking at the property itself, in terms of the good faith effort, looking at there's something designated, but I want that to be something separate from this decision in terms of looking at whatever that is. In terms of what I'm looking at is that it will require, we will make this approval to them for this loan to do this, and that at a later date it comes back, if they decide that they can't retain that, then it comes back to say that we have that conversation at that time.
All right, stand corrected.
We'll amend Exhibit A to have that in there.
Okay, let me ask Mr. Woods, I see you sitting back there quietly. Do you have any concerns with, and you understand what Mr. Montgomery is alluding to?
Yes, I've had a discussion with Mr. Montgomery, and we said that we would do an analysis of the main building of the ground school, and based upon construction of the financing, and addition of the interior of the building could be saved. It could not be saved. We would come back to the finance committee or the committee or the department to explain why with the proper documentation to show why it had to be totally demolished. And it had to be totally demolished. We said that we would try to get some kind of plaque or some kind of commemorative medallion placed here to signify the historic site.
Okay. By the way, that was Larry Woods with the Housing Authority. So we're going to attach something to this to capture those thoughts?
Yes, we will.
Okay, Ms. Burke?
No, she had.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms.
Then me.
Okay, Ms. Adams.
Thank you. I guess the one point to Councilmember Montgomery is he would know too that you're on point with that we do have ample legal authority to make that happen. Only because if, you know, as Mr. Woods said, that they can't save it, then we come back and we look at something else. But yes, we can make sure that there's a part of history kept in some form that's more than just the plaque that's already there. I want to know, at the end of the report, it stated that the BB&T rep reiterated that they will not, that BB&T will accept a short-term sale, but the church will still be held responsible for any gap in the sale price or the amount of the note. I think we might need to explain that to the public, what that means in short.
Who would like to comment on the short sale?
Can I say something as Mr. Woods comes and he can correct me if I'm wrong? From my understanding, that basically means that if there was any reduction in the cost of the sale for the price, whatever the city paid, that the actual current owner of the property, Shiloh, who is current on the note on that property, would still be responsible. So if we reduce that, if the debt on the property was $300,000 and they reduced it by $50,000, that the church would still be responsible for the other $50,000, even though it was reduced.
That's correct. And the church property, the Shiloh Church itself, would be held as collateral, and that was the concern.
Okay. Thank you.
One more.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm coming to you, Ms. Burke.
Okay. On page, I guess, 19 of the report, the agenda, it lists all of the requests from the city, 2014, 2015. The items that are listed, let's say environmental studies and the tank removal, would that not fall under brownfield, or is it because we haven't, no application was submitted? And so therefore, what? I mean, would it be too late for us to submit later for this?
Well, actually, we did not receive the Brownfields grant in 2014. If we apply again in September, it will be 2015, which would be site, it's not going to be site-specific.
Okay.
So it could possibly be used, but of course, it's a very competitive process, so we just have to see if we're going to be successful in 2015 getting a grant. But there may be dollars there available at that point in the future.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Burke.
Yes, I was going to say, with all the federal dollars, of our federal dollars, as taxpayers been spending that area, if we do not move forward with this, there would just be an eyesore over there. And I commend Mr. Woods for this community that he wants to develop up and down. And I've looked at that 10th Street, how it looks, and it leads just a couple of blocks down to where this location is. And this is serious, what I'm saying. I was in Evergreen, and I do go there, and I was walking in the Woodland family. I just happened to walk past the Woodland family plot the other day. That is a historical site. When I came, it was woodland, some kind of way they called it brown, but it's woodland. And I'm sure it's something we can do, because when people leave and they come back to look at where they went to school or tell their children or their grandchildren, we have sites. Also, some years ago with the school system, I worked with the superintendent to make sure those schools that have been closed throughout this community, north, south, west, we did put markers. I think they could be more meaningful than some of the ones I've seen, because that's just such a historical place, and Shiloh is a historical church.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Burke. Do we have a motion? Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
With the understanding of those amendments that were stated.
Okay. Opposed likewise? That passes. By the way, I'm going to make an executive decision. I'm going to defer G4. I think that's too important to rush through.
Wait, and I just talked to Mr. Rao. We can handle it next
This
month.
actually will be impacting when we do the budget next year, so it's not like, and I do think that's a major change in how we fund a portion of the budget. So we will finish, Mr. Taylor, before you walk out, I will be finished shortly, and you can have your committee.
6:15 to leave, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
G3, and I do see a lot of officers here tonight from the police department. We'll be starting your meeting at 6:15. Okay, last item, please, G3.
Item G3, information on a request from West End Millworks, LLC.
Mr. Page, you're up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Clark. This item is not for action, but based on direction provided by the committee, could be brought back next month for consideration. It is a request for financial assistance from West End Millworks, which is a mixed-use redevelopment project down in the West End area, bordered by Northwest Boulevard, Millwork Street, Bridge Street, and Canal Street. To date, they've developed about 16,800 square feet of space that's been used primarily for personal services, retail, arts, restaurants, and a microbrewery. Created about 100 jobs and invested slightly less than $1.4 million. That's phase one. They're looking to begin phase two and are asking for assistance from the city of Winston-Salem, which would be a $195,000 loan. In addition to a loan from the city, would have a bank loan as well as a loan from the Downtown Winston-Salem Foundation. City funding would equal about 15% of the total project cost. Feel that the second phase of the project would also create an additional 80 jobs and have about $1 million in investment. At this point, just hoping to get city assistance in order to expedite phase two of the project to create jobs and provide services in that area. Otherwise, it's going to be a longer-term phase two. Based on direction provided by the committee, we would look at either Economic Development Project Fund or Dell Repayment Capital Funds to fund the project request.
Okay, this is just for information this month. Is there any questions from Mr. Page? Ms. Adams?
Yes. I think this is good, but, you know, I'm always looking at, from what I'm learning from all of that school of government education training I'm getting, this project looked like they had money for the first phase of it. And they say that if a person's doing a private, whatever, project, they're supposed to, again, it's a business. You're supposed to be able to put in how to get all the funding and capital to do the business. And where I'm going with this is they're asking for $195,000 in assistance, but we're talking basically project total over $2.5 million probably. One of the things that we can do as council members is we can ask them when they plug in, and this is where you volunteered information, now you get to go and work on something. Those 100 jobs that they say they created from 9 businesses, for 9 new businesses, I need to know what the 9 new businesses were, the names, what is it that they do, and what kind of probable wages are they paying those 100 jobs. Even though it's not the contractor or developer, I can still ask for that because they put it in the report. And I also need to know were there any historically underutilized businesses or MWBs used in the developing of this property. And I also need to know if we do give them assistance, can we not require them to give us back like the sidewalks and the vehicle parking and the public parks and spaces for public use if they're getting public money? And the interest rate on the loan, if we gave it to them. You used a good word, hoping for. What's the market rate that we're talking about giving to them? And we can make it higher because we're the city. We can do that. That's what the Chapel Hill told me.
Any other questions in this area? So it sounds like I'm hearing bring it next month and put a little more information. We need to find Miss Adams a job.
Let's give
I want a job
for
with
the
the
day.
city.
A for the day.
Okay. Let me conclude by saying thank you everybody for hanging in there. We've accomplished a lot tonight, and I apologize for deferring the last item, but let's be sure it's on G1 next time. Hearing no objection, we stand adjourned.
Public safety will meet at 6:15.